Hi, this is RA, and I'm going to go over some more advanced features inside the report builder interface inside of Honeycomb. The example report I've got is year-on-year comparison for website traffic. So this data is going to compare current year and last year. I've got a chart that shows last year and this year in two different colors, so we can visually tell what's going on with website traffic across a variety of websites inside of Honeycomb very quickly. So let's go into the interface and talk about how we got that to work. These two techniques are important, and you'll want to see how this relates to your data, because you'll probably be doing something similar to this quite a bit. I'm inside the report builder interface, and we're using a formula inside of this report to help generate some of the data. And we've got a formula field in here called change. This is the percentage of change, and we're using that change field potentially for the graph here. So this is a formula field. I can generate it by clicking on add a formula, or I can double click to edit a formula. Please note that formula fields are only available when I have a summary or a matrix format. Tabular report formats don't allow formulas. So let's double click on the pencil, and that will take me to the formula editor. My mouse is giving me trouble this morning. So I can give it a name. That's the name that's going to show up over here inside the report builder. And formulas only work on number fields, and they generate numbers. So I've got number, percent, and currency that's available to me. And I have the number of decimal points, decimal places related to the number that's going to result from it, and I can choose that here. The next section will say what dictates where this formula result is going to show up, and I've got it showing at both the inside the detail area, and the reason for that is I might want to generate this formula to show in the graph. In order to do that, I need to show it at specific row and column grouping level. In this example, the report is showing website traffic over time for various websites. So I am showing this both for the date as well as the website. So that's what dictates where this information is going to show up. So now we're down to the rub here of the formula inside of this area. This is where the formula is generated. It looks like Greek, but let me explain it. If I want a field to show up, it's going to grab the numeric fields and ask me for each one of those number fields. Do I want the record count? Do I want to use any of those? When I click on any of these fields, it's going to show up inside this area. Here's an example. If I wanted the row count to show up, click on row count. Now that's in this field. That keeps you from having to remember how to type in those fields. These are the API names for the field. You can certainly use those. I am using several of those fields, and I use the drop down to get that there, to get those fields to show up. If you look at this formula, it's doing a couple things. It's pulling from the daily stats object. That's the object that shows up in this report type. The sum of traffic. Then it takes the sum of the traffic for this website and date and subtracts the previous group value. So when I built this report, it's showing the data inside multiple levels, and we're taking the previous group value sum for that date. So it's looking at the calendar year, this year, and last year. So it takes the current value and subtracts the previous group value. So for instance, we have run this report for 2010 and 2011, both the current year and last year. This formula is going to take the difference between the sum of the traffic and subtract the previous group value, which is the previous calendar year. So when I generate this formula, it's going to go through the date field and pull out last year. So what this formula is doing is it's giving me the difference between this year and last year for the traffic object. And that's what's showing up here in the report. I've got change as well as some of the traffic. You can see the change right here is what's showing up, and that's the formula field. And I can recognize it by the name that I gave it inside of the formula. So that's how formulas work. That's how they're edited. And you can see that they're showing up inside of the totals there. Now in this instance, we're going to use that data inside of the chart. So I'm going to come into the chart editor, and we've selected a bar chart, a vertical bar chart. There are many types you can see and choose those here. And my options for how that chart data show up change when I change the type of chart that I want to show. And we have shown the sum of traffic. I could change that to just looking at the y-axis for change, and it would change the way that it's drawing the report. In this instance, we're going to use sum of traffic just to show, but if I just wanted to show the traffic of websites over time, last year, this year, I could also just look at the difference between this year and last year, because that's the formula that we're using. And then my x-axis is, of course, the website, and I'm using it with vertical columns that are separated as opposed to stacked. Give it a second to redraw. We liked it as separate columns. That way there are two columns right next to each other with different colors. And that's what's generating this piece. Now, as you may have noticed, we're working off some unusual groupings of dates. We have two different date fields inside this object. One is a fiscal year comparison, and one is the date. In order to get last year and this year, or two date ranges to compare over time, I need to run my range for fiscal year comparison for this year, but I can do my date field in the report itself off of the date field. So what is this report? What is this field? This fiscal year comparison is a formula field, which is separate from a formula in the report. A formula field is generated every time a record is updated, created. So what this field is doing is it's pulling in the fiscal year. So it looks at the date of the record in this field and generates the date for this fiscal year. And that's what allows us to compare month on month. So this may be a date field from May of 2009. This fiscal year comparison would show it as May of 2011. That way I can compare all of the Mays and look at May for my date filter, like I only want to show May, as opposed to June inside the fiscal year comparison field. And that's what this date field is right here. However, if I want to show the dates broken down by this field, which is the actual date of the transaction, so I want to include and segregate it by my year, I'm going to put that date inside of the report builder on the left hand side, and I'm going to click on it, and it's going to give me a new option because it's a date field. And it's going to ask me if I want to group these dates by calendar year, quarter, month, week, or day. So for instance, if I wanted to look at email performance over the day of the week, Wednesday versus Saturday, I would break this down by day of the week. In this instance, we're looking at this year versus last year, so I need to have those broken into two columns with two colors for calendar year, and that's what we've chosen. If I were to go in and change that to the month, I've got May of 2010, May of 2011, and I got there by clicking on this drop down inside of the date field right here. So that's how we get data to stack on top of each other over time. This is also how we generate a formula field and edit it as needed. And thank you for your time. Hope it's been helpful.